What's up, it's ENDYMION, and today there's been some pretty bad news surrounding Warhammer 40K and the live-action universe that we need to dig into. Beyond this, apparently Deadpool and Wolverine should be ashamed because it is not gay enough. And there's also some really stupid updates when it comes to Lord of the Rings that I'll talk about throughout all of this too. Yeah, I know, but first let's get into Warhammer. So in case you don't know, Games Workshop announced late last year that they have entered into a partnership with Amazon to bring Warhammer 40K into live action. They also announced that Henry Cavill would be executively producing and starring in the franchise as well. Since then, we haven't heard who or what Henry Cavill would be playing, but now it seems things may have just gotten even worse. This news comes from IGN and it says Games Workshop and Amazon have until December 2024 to agree creative guidelines for Henry Cavill's Warhammer 40K film and TV series, or they won't happen. This news comes from Games Workshop's financial reports, where they explain to executives and investors that currently the going-ons behind the scenes are in shambles, and that's putting it lightly. They explain that for the past 8 months since this was announced, as of the making of this video anyways, that both parties have not been able to agree on what they want to see happen with this massive opportunity. And now time is running out, and so is the patience of not only Games Workshop, but fans as well. As IGN states, in December 2023, Games Workshop said it would work with Amazon for a period of 12 months ending in December 2024 to agree creative guidelines for the films and television series to be developed by Amazon. And that agreement will only proceed if the creative guidelines are mutually agreed between Games Workshop and Amazon. We will update you accordingly, Games Workshop said. It's not surprising that these negotiations are not going over very well behind the scenes, since it was all but confirmed by various anonymous sources claiming to have insider information that said that the female Adeptus Custodes narrative was actually being pushed by Amazon during this one-year contract and not Games Workshop. I would like to think that Games Workshop knows that doing such a drastic change would piss off their primarily male demographic. And the obvious backlash proved that this was right as well. Amazon, of course, is no stranger to pushing progressive ideas within their shows. They've pushed progressive woke ideologies aplenty in their TV shows. I mean, look at Wheel of Time and the incoming cluster you-know-what with Rings of Power Season 2, which barely even 50% of people finished watching Season 1 when it came out. And instead of listening to fan feedback, Amazon has decided to double down and make things even more tone-deaf going forward, announcing that every episode of Rings Season 2 will have exclusively female directors, as if that means anything when it comes to quality. Things like this are only done and pushed by companies in order to use virtueness as a shield when it comes to criticism. Sure, the show sucks, but you can't say that without being a bigot because women worked on it, or at least that's what they think anyway. Amazon's bastardization of IP doesn't even stop there. Look at this from that Park Place. The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, to introduce original female Elven Smith character in Season 2. This Elven Smith character, who never existed in the lore, is named Merdania, and she will be the protege to Elven Master Craftsman Celebrimbor. Which, in case you don't know, in Lord of the Rings, Celebrimbor is who was responsible for creating the Rings of Power themselves for Sauron and all of that. You already know that they're going to alter the history of the books and make it so that this female Elven Smith is actually responsible for the creation of the rings. Because, like always, why should a man be the one to make something of such great importance? Only something so godlike could have been made by the hands of a woman exclusively. Remember, these are the same people who also can't tell you with a straight face what a woman even is to begin with, but they're very sure that a woman made the rings because something feminism. Why am I going off on a tangent about Lord of the Rings in a video mostly about Warhammer? Because it's to prove a point, which is that these people don't care about these IP whatsoever. If Lord of the Rings, the most white, hetero franchise to be made in the English language, can be sabotaged and ruined like this from all angles, what hope did we really expect when it came to Warhammer? What's also crazy is that in this report, which was never officially confirmed until seemingly right now, but Games Workshop states that if Amazon could successfully turn Warhammer 40K into a viable live-action universe, that they would be open to allowing the rights to Amazon further and create shows and so on with the Age of Sigmar franchises and the whole medieval side of Warhammer as well, which would make Amazon the home of not only Lord of the Rings, but even more fantasy epics too. But I would wager if such things were to go through, they would ruin that too, and Warhammer's medieval shows would just be a bunch of women girl bossing while men grovel at their feet. It's all such a shame as well, considering Henry Cavill would yet again have another franchise that he's attached to get ruined and bogged down by moronic writers. The guy was Superman, then the writers, executives, and all of that ended up ruining the DCEU. They made everything happen too quickly and they messed it all up, and then he was Geralt of Rivia, the only saving grace of that show, and what happened? He leaves and nobody cares anymore cause yet again, the writers and such are morons. Now you're telling me that it's happening again to Henry Cavill. Either the guy just has rotten luck when it comes to these sorts of things, or Hollywood is more cooked than I thought. Like, listen to how positive he was about this Warhammer franchise TV show stuff. He said, and I quote, "I have loved Warhammer since I was a boy, making this moment truly special for me. The opportunity to shepherd the cinematic universe from its inception is quite the honor and the responsibility. I couldn't be more grateful for all the hard work put in by Vertigo, Amazon, and Games Workshop to make this happen. One step closer to making a nigh-on, lifelong dream come true. It is the greatest privilege of my professional career to have this opportunity. I can't say too much, again, it's early days still. But to have this opportunity to bring it to screen and be at the tiller so it can be faithful is key to me. This is the stuff I've been dealing with since I was a kid. This is the stuff I spend my free time daydreaming about as an adult as well, and I get to bring it into life. There is no greater reason that I joined the industry than doing something like this." End quote. Yet again, Henry Cavill's involvement with a project could go belly up and fall apart. I can't believe that Hollywood keeps ruining this guy's potential with how bad these writers and directors are that are placed to steer these massive franchises into success. I know what we're all thinking. How hard can it be, right? Just make the show like the source material. I get it. I agree. By the way, too, whenever we see things that just do the source material justice, fans are elated. Look at the One Piece live action show. A very rare win for Netflix where they didn't turn it into garbage on purpose. All you have to do with the Warhammer TV show is hire the people who live and breathe that world on a religious level. There's plenty of YouTubers and scribes out there who are walking encyclopedias when it comes to the grimdark future of that universe. All you need to do, Amazon, is take what's in those books and turn it into a show or movie. The fact this deal might fall through proves that all of my worst fears are right, which is that the only reason why this wouldn't go through is because Amazon wants to Rings of Power the bejesus out of Warhammer. There's no other tangible explanation for why after 6 months of discussions that nothing has been set in stone yet. It just doesn't. Like I said, look what happened to Warhammer the moment Amazon demanded something. They fundamentally changed the lore on purpose to fit their ideals. And I would wager that was done simply because Amazon looked at what was available to them and went, well, why are the elite guards all men? Why aren't there any women? That doesn't seem very progressive. I guarantee you, if the talks go through and Amazon gets their wishes, you will have a black female Space Marine in the show's universe 100%. Never mind the fact that canonically female biology cannot handle the strain and mutations that come along with the gene manipulations done on warriors to become Space Marines. Because in woke Hollywood, there is no biological differences between the genders, so surely a woman can be a Space Marine too, no? Or they would just make a bunch of male Space Marines become trans, and then that way they can circumvent this lore concept and have what they want in a sense too. What I really hate about not only what Amazon wants from Warhammer, but all of these bad live-action adaptations, even the new games that are being made or the reboots of any kind of entertainment, is how these creators firmly believe that all of these worlds, regardless of how fantastical or totally not close to real life as they are, they must all adhere to and represent what they deem actual real life that looks like to them. Every fantasy world cannot be a fantasy world. It has to represent all the demographics and everything else in real life. which ultimately means that your fantasy world is not really a fantasy world at all, is it? Instead, it's just allegories and checklists for real-life nonsense that you deem is important, which completely destroys the entire point of that world existing if it can't be by definition a fantasy world in the first place. The reason why people seek out fantasy or science fiction is largely to experience something that is not tied to real-world politics or beliefs. I don't want to watch an Age of Sigmar-esque live-action Warhammer show and have the orcs in the show start talking about reproductive rights or how conservatives are bad. I want to watch that to see orcs and giant rats fight mankind in bloody grim combat. I genuinely believe the reason why this deal is struggling as much as it is behind the scenes is because Amazon just wants to modern audience the hell out of this franchise and Games Workshop is saying no. As I've reported in my previous Warhammer videos, Games Workshop was clearly far too eager and willing to get this franchise off the ground as soon as possible. They obviously looked at how live-action shows for other franchises boosted their sales, and they wanted that to happen for Warhammer. But they very clearly signed a bad deal when it came to working with Amazon. Like, if within a month or two of signing with Amazon, they're already trying to turn custodies into women, imagine the brain-dead changes they'd eventually conceive come a year or two down the line if this all goes through. Your Emperor of Mankind will be gender fluid or non-binary at least. They will use the lore against the fans and say the Emperor is a collection of experiences and power of various powerful human shamans, and that at least some of these shamans were gay, non-binary, or whatever else, and women as well. Ignore the fact that the Emperor was born a young boy, that doesn't matter, they will find a way to ruin and change it. I can already see the opening exposition scene in my head if Amazon made this. There's a bald black woman chanting beside a non-binary Asian they/them. There's a few white shaman guys, but they're in the back away from focus. The camera then zooms in on a Native American girl boss. She's the leader of the shamans because of course she is. And they all put their powers into this Emperor and it ends up being a woman. Remember that the Emperor is a powerful psyker, so they'll use that to wiggle their moronic beliefs into existence. Because the Emperor can just use his or her psyker powers to change the perceptions of what they look like to those around them. And the plot twist will be that the Emperor of Mankind was actually an ethnically ambiguous black non-binary woman or something the entire time. But they used their psyker powers to make everyone think they're a strong white man so they would follow them or something. And all of the actual art of the Emperor is just propaganda created to garner support because they needed to comment on racism within the real world through the vehicle that is Warhammer. And ultimately, the world is being shaped and ran by a female Emperor this entire time. Also, they're lesbian too. Their partner is a short-haired woman with a septum piercing, and all of the Emperor's elite guards that actually know their actual appearance, that stand within 5 meters of them, are also strong, brave women of color, and they're also all lesbians too. That is very likely something that Amazon would do. I mean, like I said previously with Rings of Power, they are almost certainly positioning that female Elven Smith to become the true creator of the rings. I guarantee it. They even confirmed in that article that Galadriel and Sauron will have a relationship with one another. An elven woman who never fought in any wars is instead fighting in every war apparently now, and also she's romantically involved with the guy who dooms the world basically. Everything Amazon seems to put their hands on is pushed to subvert expectations and inject their own ideas into. And the only sensible explanation for why this is not going to go forward, since they have 5 months left before the contract runs out, is simply that Games Workshop wanted a live-action franchise where every faction was exactly how they are in the tabletop and lore books, because that would, obviously, just make sense and make it easier for people to seek out merch based on which faction they like the most. And Amazon clearly didn't care and just wanted to modern audience the hell out of everything and turn Warhammer into Rings of Power 2.0. And if Henry Cavill leaves, I really wouldn't be surprised either. The guy is an executive producer on this entire thing, which, in case you don't know, that means Henry gets final say on anything that Amazon tries to pass. And since we know that the guy is obviously a big Warhammer fan and wants everything to be authentic, and he's seen not once but twice how morons can ruin potential franchises, he's very likely rejecting every moronic change that Amazon is trying to make. If this contract doesn't go through, what happens, you might be asking? Simply put, Amazon would lose out on Warhammer completely. Unless they renegotiate and extend the contract, which obviously would cost more money and resources, the very likely scenario is that both parties just wash their hands clean of all of this. And Games Workshop could, in theory, move the franchise to another potential service wanting to collaborate like Netflix or Disney even. But based on the track records of those platforms, a Warhammer live-action series would probably be even more cooked under someone like Disney. And Netflix is just so hit or miss, I would wager that they too would want to ruin it too. After all, look what they did with Witcher as well. My advice here is that this will likely not go through and it will end with the franchise in limbo. And it's in Games Workshop's best interest to maybe just wait a few years until things hopefully get less activism-led and more quality-based and respectful again. Then they can shop around and have their demands more easily met, hopefully. Because doing it now will likely just result in a piss-poor live-action franchise that doesn't resemble the IP besides maybe the Space Marine armor at best. But that's where we're at right now with Warhammer. It's not looking good whatsoever. Time is running out, contracts are falling apart, and neither side seems interested in budging because of their wants and needs being the polar opposites. Could things move forward and be fixed? Maybe, but at this point, I mean, we're 6 months in and they still can't agree on anything. Maybe once Space Marine 2 comes out, and if it does well, Games Workshop can use that success in a Hail Mary attempt to persuade Amazon to do what they want with the IP. As always, I'll keep you all updated, of course, on all of this, but yeah, sorry guys, this is not really the good news that we were all hoping for. Or maybe it's the best news possible if you really didn't want Amazon's fingers on this. I guess it depends on who you are. Now, let's move on to Deadpool and Wolverine. By now, you've likely seen it. I thought it was a really fun movie, and I'll watch it again once it hits streaming. It's making hundreds of millions, seems like most people are happy with it, and that's great. Overall, it's a big win for Disney Marvel, and like I said previously in other videos, it's not surprising because Deadpool and Wolverine feels authentically faithful to both characters. But one journalist is mad about this because of course they are. This person whose name is Guy Lodge, they work for The Guardian with their article titled, "Deadpool's obnoxious gay panic humor is a tiresome schoolyard taunt." Here's what they said, which is, my god, so stupid, and I quote, "This summer's Deadpool and Wolverine uses the superhero's alleged pansexuality as queer bait but turns it into a punchline. For an MCU that has, in its post-Avengers era, increased its focus on minority representation and inclusivity, Deadpool brings more to the table than the hetero-masculine Wolverine. Introduced into the Marvel Comics stable in 1992, the character was conceived as openly pansexual. Deadpool's brain cells are in constant flux," explained Fabian N., Deadpool's co-creator, on Twitter back in 2015. "He can be gay one minute, hetero the next, etc. All are valid," citing neurodivergence to explain a character's sexuality may not be radically progressive, but in the world of mainstream superheroism, queer fans will take what scraps they can get. Following his Disney rebrand, Deadpool may not stand as the MCU's first queer superhero. That would be Phastos, played by Brian Tyree Henry, a gay man and marginal presence in the 2022 flop Eternals, but he is now their most prominently foregrounded. Anyone fearful that might mean a more earnest engagement with the character's pansexuality can breathe easy. However, Deadpool and Wolverine picks up the previous film's blend of progressive lip service and tentative gay panic exactly where they left off, now with the added self-referencing swarm. The approving roar that greeted this line in my packed-out screening suggests that Deadpool's sexuality is still pitched exactly right for a commercial audience more comfortable with treating it as an amusing quirk than as a more substantial character trait. The new film does nothing to build on its predecessor's already scant detailing of Deadpool's pansexuality, despite pairing him with Wolverine, a character on whom Deadpool has expressed a crush in the comic books. There's a smattering of tame, no-homo banter between them, but nothing to frighten the horses. Even with the flexibility given by the film's more vaunted R rating, a peripheral male character checks him out a couple of times. A key fight sequence is set to Madonna's Like a Prayer for seemingly no other reason than that the song is beloved by the gay community, and that, I guess, is funny enough. That the film's pansexual insinuations go no further is neither surprising nor particularly detrimental to its joyous functionality as multiplex fodder. By now, any queer viewers seriously looking to see themselves in a Deadpool film are in strenuous denial." End quote. So this writer is angry because Deadpool and Wolverine doesn't make Deadpool's pansexuality a more prominent part of his character throughout the film. The reason why I thought including this with the Warhammer news is because what this writer is wanting out of Deadpool and Wolverine is the exact same kind of thing that Amazon is likely pushing for but Games Workshop is clearly against. These modern audience journalist writers, they don't see characters for anything beyond their sexuality, gender, or their skin color. Throughout the entire article, this writer just complains that Deadpool isn't kissing enough men or getting pegged enough for them. The reality is that Deadpool's sexuality matters little to his character. I don't really care if Deadpool likes to sleep with men or women. The character, to me, has always been more of a joke, and if anything, a self-insert for the writer of whoever's writing that particular Deadpool story to be crass and funny. Deadpool 3 did as well as it did because it adhered to his actual strengths, not his sexuality mind you, but just keeping him true to being funny, violent, and kind of a sadistic freak. I mean, if you saw it, you know how he eventually adopts Dogpool and what needed to happen for that to be done. The problem here with modern progressives is that they don't see characters for what they are. They only see them for what they want them to be. This guy Lodge of the Guardian, he sees Deadpool and ignores his crude humor or wicked weapon attacks. All they see is, why isn't Deadpool gay enough? This journalist says it right there at the end of what I read as well. By now, any queer viewers seriously looking to see themselves in a Deadpool film are in strenuous denial. Why would a gay viewer go to a movie called Deadpool and Wolverine and want to see their sexuality be on display? I thought we were watching an MCU movie, not Brokeback Mountain with superheroes. This tired expectation by certain groups that they can't enjoy a movie if the main character doesn't have the same sexuality as them always is stupid. Even if this were just a Wolverine movie, I don't need to see Wolverine constantly banging or sleeping with women to somehow validate me as a viewer. I don't want movies in general, period, to have romance anyways, haven't for years, if not a decade or more at this point. All I want to see is the characters grow, go through some hard times, and then come out better for it. The constant need to be validated by everything you see on screen, like this journalist demands, proves to me more than anything else a lack of confidence in this journalist's identity and worth. If all you want from your movies is to see your sexuality constantly or have characters trading spit all the time, go write a fan fiction or something about it. But the majority of the world clearly is tired of that kind of stuff and just wants to see some good entertainment to escape from the world for a few hours. It's like I said with Warhammer, these journalists can't separate fiction from reality. It has to represent what they see every day all the time. And if it doesn't, they write articles like this one in retaliation instead. Deadpool and Wolverine is not some queer-bait film. It's about two very broken people realizing that they're not alone in their pain and then teaming up to save something bigger than themselves or their problems. The movie even starts with both leads at the lowest points of their lives. I won't go into the plot more than that in case you haven't seen it, obviously, but if you have seen it, you know what I mean. I can't remember where I heard it, but someone said Deadpool and Wolverine are perfect foils to each other because in Deadpool's case, his cells are trying to kill him constantly and Wolverine's are always trying to keep him alive. You have this perfect yin and yang of childlike insanity that clashes with the tired old man woes of Wolverine, and that's why it works so well. A perfect combination of straight man meets funny goofy guy energy. Never once have I thought to myself, I want to see Deadpool be more gay or Wolverine be more straight. I just want to see Deadpool be what actually defines him, his humor, his borderline murderous intent, and his morality to want to do good while everything around him is blowing up. This writer proves like always that these journalists and writers can't separate fact from fiction anymore. Warhammer can't be Warhammer, it has to be Warhammer now, or it's not good enough. Deadpool and Wolverine can't just be a fun movie, no alcohol required, of course not. Instead it has to validate people like these journalists, or it's a bad product. I think the audience is speaking loud and clear, and it's obvious when you adhere to the majority, you succeed. Or you can pander to people like this writer and end up like every other flop in existence. Stop trying to modern audience everything and maybe just enjoy things for what they are for once. Whether it's Warhammer, Lord of the Rings, or Marvel, it's clear when you don't pander, you end up winning. Will Amazon learn their lesson and give Games Workshop what they want? I guess time will tell. Will Henry Cavill leave the project altogether? If this falls through, it's very likely. And then what happens? And do you think that Deadpool and Wolverine wasn't gay enough, or do you think that doesn't matter at all? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you for watching, subscribe, share, and like the video, and thanks to my patrons and members, and I'll see you in the next one.